Hey guys, what's up? It's Great, and this is my 0.3 minion wishlist, right? There's the obvious things like golems, animated guardians, and things that we don't have, but this list of 12 items are going to focus on the things that we've got, and hopefully things that we, get upgraded and get buffed, I've played minions for like 1,200 hours. It's great. I love it. 0.1 that season was awesome. Everyone was super addicted. People were hyped for 0.2 for Spectres, and then we just basically got betrayed, right? And hopefully, I mean, it's still early access, right? And GGG, hopefully they do the right thing. They made some good changes in the campaign for campaign scaling, but there's still a lot of stuff and bugs and, things that they work on, especially Endgame power scaling. In the list, I'm going to cover like, the Spectre fixes, minion AI, body blocking, support gems, the minion death timer, new presence area nerfs, spirit adjustments, the passive tree, again, Endgame power scaling, active abilities with the mana costs, general bugs like Fawn of Rage, Raging Spirits for some reason nerfed, no one knows why, it's not even that crazy. And then there's like things like zombies, no love for zombies whatsoever. And then hopefully we get some other stuff like, some better uniques, more love with Socketables and runes. Use the timestamps again to skip around, and yeah, enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in 0.3. So starting with the top of the list, the Spectre fixes. And this is kind of a big one because Dawn of the Hunt early, it had a lot of hype around Spectres. Spectres were coming in. Everyone wanted to use it. Everyone's like, was so hyped to go like Pokemon hunting, find all the right Spectres, but there's a lot of issues, right? Still glitches from like wisp spirit form. Their movement speed, right? They need to be toned for specifically each Spectre because they lag. Some of them are really slow and they lag behind. There's only a few that are really good. The ability frequency, some of them, it's too much of a cooldown for them to be like useful. That needs to change. Some certain support gems don't even apply, like spell cascade or spell echo. Yeah, you can't even put it on certain Spectres, and I know it's all in the fun or all in the spirit of like not making it OP, but I mean there's still a lot of work. There's a lot of work for them to do. And I realize it's still early game, but hopefully for this in the next league they add in at a minimum at least elite versions of every Spectre, at least the good ones. Like right now you're looking at the Death Knights. These guys, Death Knights are really good, right? Elite Death Knights, they have some special damage scaling, and I wish we have more of those. Hopefully we get more of them. So here's a little video that you can see, right? This is a T4 Zesht with these Death Knights, and if you look at the damage, right, it kills him. It takes about 25 seconds, 30 seconds to kill a T4 boss, which is actually really good. It's respectable, but not being too overpowered or broken with like someone like some of the other meta builds and stuff out there, but it's pretty decent. I mean, obviously in season one we had way more damage, right? Season 1 we could like 3-shot Zesh with skeletons. Hopefully we get like some type of like scaling on the high end. We'll talk about that later, but the first one, at least, oh my god, at least elite versions of the Spectres, so that way we can have some use for them, along with changing ways to use them and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that needs to get done to make Spectres like really good again. So that's the first thing, right, for on the list. So movement speed is a good segue to number 2, right? Minion AI and body blocking. So I'm going to show you, for movement speed, they have to be really fast, especially for melee minions. And I get it, not every minion is supposed to be carbon copies of the same one, but I don't know, hopefully they add in some supports that'll take care of like some melee minions, like for instance, melee attack range. Some way to clear. I'm specifically referring to Skeletal Reavers, right? Because Skeletal Reavers are a great minion. Everyone wants to use them, but they're useless. Totally useless for mapping unless you're playing a Lich with Rupture the Soul. They have no AoE. They have short range. They body block. I'm going to show you an example of some that are good. There's like 5 that are good, that are actually decent, good melee Spectres. It's just that they fall off in the end game for damage. So the first one I'll show off is this bladedash transcendant. These guys, they move fast, right? They keep up with the player. They do decent damage. They have a gap closing leap ability, which is not too bad, right? You can see them. You can actually like kind of go through. This is a T15 map in Hive. It's a little wide. There's not like some choke points, but because they have that leap ability, they actually can get to their target pretty well, right? And if you put in, your pain offering, it does pretty good. The one downside too that I wish all minions had was the ability to increase their aggro range. So hopefully they have something like Feeding Frenzy and PoE1 that sets them to aggressive. Hopefully they have some type of thing like that for this next league. Some way to you know, set it to aggressive. I highly doubt it. I highly doubt that that's going to be a thing, but hopefully eventually that's something that we can get, you know, set them to aggressive so that way they have a further aggro range. And as for range melee minions, man, the range melee minions, let me tell you about those guys, right? Like, everybody knows they body block, they lag far behind, so you have to deal with presence area and all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping, right, because if they don't give us convocation, they need to have some way for these range melee minions to keep up. Hopefully they can add in them moving while attacking. If they could move while attack, that would be great. And maybe increase the base speed of Relentless Fallen, where it's instead of 20% increased movement speed, you know, maybe something absurd like 50%. It would make these guys be crazy. But I mean, just look at them, right? These are one of the few melee minions that are actually really decent, that you can actually use to kind of clear, you know, once you get them to a higher level. It's just that they lack, where they lack is like every other Spectre, right? T4 boss damage. Can you use them to boss? Can you use them to do, you know, whatever, XYZ challenge? Like, they need help towards the endgame damage scaling. Now let me show you, right, the Vile Vulture. This is another Spectre with really great AI. They have a really far aggro range. Like, their aggro range is really far. Hold on, they're really weak because I need to switch over all these. Please, for the love of God, add mouse and keyboard support while on controller. All right, hold on. Let me see if I could find something for these guys to kill. The Vile Vulture is personally my favorite because they have really good AI. They have far aggro range, right? And their leap ability is not on a cooldown. It's kind of OP. I'd imagine instead of buffing the other Spectres, that instead they're going to get nerfed. that's most likely what'll happen. I hope that's not the case, right? Because these guys are really good and it stands out with other Spectres. I can see them not making other Spectres as good as others because they want, you know, some differences. They don't want everyone to be the same. But hopefully they add in some, you know, support gems like Reach. Reach also, instead of just extending AoE, Reach also extends, you know, melee attack range. It does that. So that way the body blocking, and they'll be able, your melee minions will be able to all hit, you know, a small target. I'm specifically referring to Reavers, for instance, right? You know, so they don't body block each other. They can still hit the target or whatever when they're crowding a boss. But that's what I'm hoping, right, for this number 2 for minion AI, body blocking, movement speed. Hopefully we get some buffs in like in that range. So ranged attackers being able to move while attacking, and then maybe some movement speed buffs and better AI setting your minions to aggressive so that way they can like aggro from a further range for these other melee minions in the form of like a support gem or something like that. Something like that would be really nice to kind of have. All right, so number 3 is support gems, right? Muster sucks and then bugs. So what do I mean about that? I wish they add more support gems, but specifically muster. I think some people like this. I personally don't. I really don't like muster. I don't like the idea of it. I think it goes against, you know, having multiple skills to do combos and stuff like that anyway. You have all these extra minions that don't do anything, right? And it inherently makes this scepter best in slot because it gives you the 2 warrior minions. I mean, it's nice. There's some synergies with Infernalist having like the Hound getting 7%, but the idea of having it just to take up skill slots with other minions, like if you're playing a skeletal build, like skeletal mages, then you have a Spectre, you know, Terracotta Warrior just taking up 10 spirit for no reason. It takes up all these skill slots, and I miss having like the ability to put other stuff in there, right? So that way you can play around, you can experiment, you can have more diverse builds and stuff like that. I don't like the idea of having this, just to have in these extra, you know, skills and minions that aren't even going to do anything. And it's like they want you to press buttons, and then it's just taking up space. And it kind of sucks because honestly, it's nice having like blink on your weapon swap. It's nice having like leap slam and stuff like that for earlier mapping and traversing, especially with the lack of movement speed. So hopefully maybe they implement a fix for, you know, complaints like that. Like, I like having movement speed skills, so hopefully maybe they add in like more movement speed stuff, or maybe they redo muster altogether. Instead, it's different. Instead of like different minions, maybe it's like a breakpoint of a total number. I don't know. I don't want to give any bad ideas, but something else like that, something else to just change it, because I really don't like the idea of having to have in like different minions just to take up spots just for a power increase, you know? Like it's kind of, it has its positives and negatives, and for me personally, I don't really like it. I don't like it. I wish they change it. And then the other things with support gems, other support gems, right? Along with the bugs being Fawn of Rage. Fawn of Rage doesn't even work on your pain offering. Doesn't even apply rage. Hopefully they fix that. Another one is Sacrificial Lamb. Sacrificial Lamb, this guy only sacrifices one, bro. Like, just let it sacrifice both, dude. Like, for the love of God, bro. Just, there's 2 Skeletal Warrior minions. If Sacrificial Lamb is in there, it should apply to all the Warrior minions until there's no more Skeletal Warrior minions, and then it'll take, you know, whatever the priority is next for the next minion. So hopefully they fix that. And then I just mentioned earlier that you can't put Spell Echo. So here I have a Val Skeletal Priest and a Demolitionist, right? These guys, they can't apply. And I know it's because they don't want it to be OP, I guess, or maybe it's an oversight. Hopefully they fix that to apply specifically for things with spells, because there's a lot of like interesting things, you know, that you could do. And another one that I talked about was Reach. Hopefully Reach, instead of just more area of effect, Reach actually increases melee range or something. Obviously it'll change that less accuracy rating gets enemies within 2 meters, but or maybe they just add in an entirely new support gem that helps like melee specters. So let me just show you these guys, right, with support gems for these guys. So these are the Val Skeletal Priests, and you can see there's some really good abilities here. You know, they have like an electric ability that bounces, so it's very like very niche. Like it's not even a skill that a player can have. And then maybe somehow apply that with some other thing with Spell Cascade. Oh my god, that would be so nice. Or maybe even Spell Echo, so that way you can reuse them. Obviously I'm using the weapon swap skill tech, so they're probably gonna nerf this, having to, you know, swap in, swap out, because you can do some other stuff too. You can do some really wacky stuff. Here, I'm gonna show this, right? If you have a secondary skill with this Rotting Demolitionist, this might not be a good idea to show, because then it might get nerfed, right? You're constantly switching, and then you could throw like your different skills. It basically becomes like an entirely new way of playing, which is really nice. It's creative, you know, super fun. You're using different minions for different scenarios and stuff. But yeah, hopefully they fix that. Hopefully they change support gems, you know, muster, adding in different things. Or even like one support gem idea I had was kind of like Eternal Blessing from PoE1, right? Instead of maybe it only works for blessings and stuff like that, or buffs. It removes the reservation. Or maybe a support gem that instead of reserving spirit, it reserves mana instead, you know? Maybe not for minions, but something like Blink or something like that might be overpowered, you know, who knows? Maybe some other things that would be nice. But yeah, more support gems. I hope, I wish. There's gotta be more support gems, right? They did a whole thing, a new patch, upgraded support gems, and we got no love, no minion love. So hopefully they change that and we get some good stuff. Number 4 on the wish list is the minion death timer. I noticed that I didn't have presence area. I forgot to add that in there. That's another thing too. But first, the minion death timer, right? Man, it just doesn't even feel good. It's a nuisance. I mean, I get it. They wanted you to have like some type of feeling of stress whenever your minions die, but there's no way to play around it, right? You don't have convocation to pull your minions back. The direct command is useless. It doesn't fucking work well at all. You can use a weapon swap, but I'm sure weapon swap's not working as intended. And then like it just gets in the way. It makes your mapping feel really disjointed. If your minions start to die when you're like early maps or whatever, you have to wait. You basically have to wait, you know, for them to come back up. It doesn't even add any difficulty. And then for bossing, I can see that, you know, they get one-shotted in bossing, so it adds difficulty. And then the only way to play around it is you basically have to have last gasp on your main damage dealing minion, which kind of sucks, because if you're using muster, right, and you can't even have multiple damage dealing minions, which it would be nice if you could, but you can only use one support gem, right, because of that. So last gasp has to go on your main damage dealing minion, which then takes up a support gem slot, which reduces your DPS. So it's like a cascading effect of like choices you have to make, and it doesn't feel good. It kind of restricts your ability to make builds and stuff in a way. I mean, I don't like the fact that, like, you know, like, sure, if you don't have last gasp, a boss wipes out all your minions. It's your fault, but there's no way to play around it. There's nothing you can do. So for those reasons, I hope they change that cascading minion death timer, where if one dies, then another one dies while it's dead, it resets the timer. I hope they just have individual timers, right? Because then it really just applies to when they all get one-shotted. Then you should have last gasp. Then it's like, okay, I should have last gasp. Makes sense. Cool. There's no way to convocate them away from damage, right? That sucks. And then it feels just bad in maps when they die and you have to wait. And God forbid one dies and then you weapon swap to use a blink or some other skill, and then you try to swap back. They're all on timer. So it's really just makes the pacing of the gameplay slow down because you have to play around that death timer. And then skeletons are more squishy, right? So even if you have a bunch of strong specters, one skeleton dies, you weapon swap, you blink, you try to summon them back, they're all dead, you know? So that sucks. Now the next thing, presence area, right? Presence area is not that big of a deal when it comes to mapping or early gameplay. When it comes to campaigning, right? In campaign, early gameplay, you hardly ever notice it. Where presence area makes a big difference is endgame. Once you start to scale damage, right? Your damage comes from these ever-grasping rings or other things that are in area, unholy might, you know, if you're playing like a lich or something. And it seems all right, right? Here's presence area. If I go to presence, it's basically, it looks like it's the whole screen. Like, oh, it seems like it's pretty good. Like, look, it's the whole screen. What are you talking about? Well, when you have ranged minions, they're so far back. They're so far back, right? And it's a pain. It's a pain. You constantly have to double back. You constantly have to double back to make sure you're in presence to give them that extra damage boost. And when you're using like double ever graspings, right? You've invested enough currency in order to have double ever graspings with maximum resistances. It's a lot of damage you're missing. It's a lot of damage, and you having to be close and stuff like that. And then the fact that ranged minions, they aggro from a longer distance, especially if you have snipers. So they lag really far back. And because you can't convocate your minions to you, it really makes playing with them, you're forced to run out of range and then have them respawn right on top of you, which is a weird way of playing the game anyway. So either they have more move speed, right? Ranged minions, or presence area gets a little bit of a buff. Maybe instead of like, even just a slight buff would make a pretty big difference, because default presence area is 4 meters, 5 meters, right? Another 5 meter with, you know, the points on the passive skill tree, which is these guys. What is that? 15, 35, 75%. So 75% of 5, that puts you at like what? Maybe 8 meters? It's still not that great, but I can see why they have it on there. They don't want you like having your full buff with your minions super far away from you on the other side of the screen, getting all the passive bonuses. So I can see that, but you know, then having presence area on jewels and stuff, so having to roll jewels, it feels like there's too much stuff that's tied to it that makes it like a really top tier stat, especially like, oh, now you gotta have an alpha house helm, right? Alpha house helmet or whatever it's called, and then that thing costing like 30 divines and stuff like that. So it being a like really crucial to your build is kind of a pain for minions. So that's my 2 cents. Hopefully it gets a little bit of a buff for presence area, because just having to double back doesn't feel good with ranged minions, especially because they move slow, unless they figure that out by having like convocation or something like that. All right, number 5, spirit adjustments, specifically the cost of specters, right? Because if you look at the cost of specters, this one's not too bad. It's 50, you know, but then even at level 20 with the 10% reduction, it's still 45. It's a lot. And then vile vulture, my favorite one, 120. We're not even covering the ones that are 130, and it just costs way too much, especially for the damage scaling that you get. You know what I mean? So hopefully that gets buffed, it gets adjusted somehow. Because if you look at how much spirit I have 513 spirit. That's a lot. That is a large amount of spirit for Dawn of the Hunt, right? And the only way to get those is to, you know, get one of these amazing 181 spirit scepters when there's no crafting in the game, and you're like, I don't know, dude, you got to get really, really lucky to get this. Like, it should be at least decently attainable, right, for that amount of spirit. And this has all happened because, you know, nerfs to Against the Darkness, not being able to get spirit that way, what have you, all those reasons. But hopefully they definitely take care of that spirit adjustment for that amount, either a step in the right direction was this minion have reduced reservation on the helmet, but maybe more ways to get reduction. The only other spot is on your boots, right? You having to use the unique boots that no one wants to use because the movement speed is so slow. So having more ways to reduce spirit, maybe having these guys to rework the spirit cost for them to lower in spirit costs as your jewel levels, you know, for your skill gem, as opposed to just having it be on a quality kind of thing. Because then since it's connected to quality, then it's like, you know, Gemling Legionnaire becomes like this niche thing that almost becomes the best in slot, where you're forced to do that, which I guess is cool. You know, it has its own strengths and weaknesses, but it really takes away because, and then we haven't even covered convalescence rather, right? Like this is bugged. It's being used on the second weapon slot, and that's not supposed to be the case. So if this is in here, right? Like look at that. There's already blasphemy, costs 54 spirit, right? Imagine having convalescence. Then you gotta reduce that. Now I'm down to four specters, and then I guess I could, you know, put in some Val Priest, but I can only put in one Val Priest if I wanted to. So we're really hurting for, you know, some build variety because of the spirit requirements. So some solutions, maybe, well, it's hard to have solutions without making other classes overpowered. Like what I talked about earlier, right? Having a support gem that changes spirit reservation to mana reservation. Imagine that on another class, you know. So I don't know what the fix is. It would have to be a direct fix into reducing the spirit cost on the actual specters themselves if they don't want to impact other builds. So hopefully for the wish list, that's something that gets introduced, you know. At least something like that, because I can't imagine once they fix this bug of convalescence, you know, that goes out the window. And then imagine if you're, you know, you want to mess around with your build, you want to be more creative, you want withering presence, hello, goodbye 100 spirit specter. That's another one. If you only have 4 specters, that's 25% of your DPS gone, right? You want to run blasphemy or whatever. It just, I wish there's some type of rework towards it, you know, something that makes sense. Hopefully something, at least, or at a minimum, just a direct reduction into the spirit cost for specters. All right, number 6. So we're halfway through. Number 6 is passive tree, right? And it says Mayberry cluster jewels as a solution. So what's up with the passive tree? Basically this. We're spread too thin. You have the defenses for your character, your minions. There's things like AoE you have to take. There's mana regen, energy shield, damage, minion life, revive timer, energy shield recharge time, energy shield recharge rate. You know, there's all these different things that are like necessary for endgame, higher tier, really juiced delirium, plus, you know, 400% waystone drop chance, that because you're so spread thin, it's really hard to be like creative with your build, because there are things that you have to take, you know what I mean? There's no hybrid builds that you can do in this Dawn of the Hunt season. Like in the previous season, I was having like I could kind of do a poison build, poison and minions, but in this one, if you're playing minions, you have to go full on minions. You can't go anywhere else. You can't take any half measures and anything else. You know what I mean? You really have to fully invest in minions if you want it to work. So I hope they change the minion damage scaling, because then that would kind of relieve some of the passive tree stress and having to take all these different things for yourself and your minions. So I know they're going to change it. I feel like they will. And this mostly affects endgame. You really feel this towards the endgame because there's just not enough damage scaling. One of the solutions that you could possibly have is with the cluster jewels, but I don't know how I feel about cluster jewels, right? Because then it's like a jewel socket thing. If they did have cluster jewels, it would be cool, because you could say like, you know, but if you put a cluster down here, you can take all these other hybrid stuff and then still have like a bunch of minion cluster jewels that really allows you to use minions without having to be up here with all these different proper minion areas, like if you wanted to be down here or something. So I doubt they're gonna put that in for the wish list. I doubt that's even gonna be in there, but that's something I would like to see in the future. You know, that would be really nice. It would be a really big like treat for having really unique builds and stuff like that, and still be I don't know, semi-specialized. But yeah, that was a good segue into number 7, Endgame power, right? Oh man, this is the part where if you played the beginning of Dawn of the Hunt with minions, it was insane. It was super hard. Now I kind of enjoyed it because I played like, you know, 800 hours of the first season, but that you can't do that, dude. They cannot do that. They can't just nerf things into the ground like that. It feels bad. It doesn't feel good. It just makes people not want to play the game. And if people aren't playing the game, you're not making money. So from a business standpoint, it doesn't even make any sense why they even did it. Like the 7-way nerfs to minions. I get that it was too strong. So look at this video. I'm about to show you a Titan minion build. So this is a T4 Zesht, right? And I don't even have super powered up gear. I mean, I guess I do. I have about like 300 divines in gear, but it was easier to make currency in season 1 too. But I basically killed a Zesht in 3 shots, right? Boom, dead, right? So I see how that's not, they don't want that, right? They don't want you to just T4 pinnacle boss, kill it with 3 hits. But it's like what Mark Roberts said, at some point in time your character should feel powerful, right? That is, I can't find the quote, but he said it. At some point in time, your character should feel powerful, right? With a lot of investment, you know, you should feel you should feel very rewarded for your build. So if you look at my gear, I have some pretty decent gear. I'm built for Spectres right now. Spectres, I already said it a bunch, you know, Spectres were kind of half-baked when they put it in, but they're really weak, you know, even normal Skellies, right? They're nowhere near as powerful as they were in season 1. And it wasn't like it was cheap. It was a lot of investment. So like 400 divines to, you know, get that 3-hit kind of thing. And then for the only person I've seen one-shot Zesht was basically using, I forget what you call it. It's the unique jewel that doubles blue gems, right? Maximum freaking everything. Basically multiple mirrors worth of gear, one-shot Zesht. Overpowered. I get it. But you should feel rewarded for that much of investment. But if you look at this, right? This is my basically maxed out build, and I'm gonna use my vile vultures, right? And look how long this takes. It's not good, right? You already know it's not good. It's great for mapping, but like at no point do you feel powerful in the way that we used to. Just look at that damage, right? This is like Prism of Belief +3. All the fixings of damage that I could find everywhere that we could get, you know, maxed out on the passive tree, every minion node on the passive tree that we could get, broken armor, you know, using flame, added fire damage with what is that, 60% exposure, right, from incinerate. Like it's just not enough, you know. You definitely aren't getting your money's worth for the build, especially for, so hopefully they're working on that. They talked about that. They're saying like individual skills need to get buffed, and you would consider this, you know, the Spectres itself like an individual skill that would need to get buffed. And here's me using cheap mechanics in order to have infinite energy shield recharge. Let me make sure. But look at this time. Like, what is this? We've been fighting this guy for a minute now. So hopefully this does get fixed with a little bit more endgame damage scaling, as well as elite versions of Spectres. Because if you have elite versions of Spectres, you know, you could assume you're gonna have more damage as well. So that'll be good. Hopefully they have something in the works for that, because the beginning of Dawn of the Hunt wasn't good. Nobody liked it. There was no reason to nerf anything that required that much investment anyway. I'm about to lean into like the conspiracy side. I hope they're not moving the game in a direction where they're gonna nerf the builds that were strong, so they can give you a reason to play these new builds. Because eventually what's gonna happen, right? They're gonna release a character, it's not released out, and then to play it, early access, you gotta pay for it. And that's like some gacha game philosophy type stuff, and I don't want to see that in this game, especially because a lot of people that play this game religiously or play it a lot, they spend money on microtransactions anyway. You know? Spend tons on microtransactions, bro. Why do we need to have like, why you gotta play early access? So hopefully this is just the oversight and something that they learn from, and they won't over nerf stuff, and they'll give you like an appropriate damage boost. Because like what Mark said, right? Gonna say it again. At some point, your character should feel powerful. So I hope that gets fixed. You know, it would be so awesome if it did. Here we are with number 8, right? Active abilities. So the biggest thing with the active abilities, right? It's mostly like a thing that happens in the end game for the high end, which is that the mana cost for one is too high, right? So how high is it? If you look at my mana, I have 1100 mana, right? And then if we look at how much it costs, one ice bomb is 508 mana. That's a lot. So I can only cast it twice before I'm out of mana. And there's not enough like mana reduction nodes on the passive tree, so this is something that could be added into number 6, right? Passive tree changes, so more mana reduction. That's just like accessible, but then it's like I said, there's so many things, right? So many things to get. Like even Enrage for the Reavers is 421 mana. I don't know why, right? And then this guy 884. Gas Arrow 429, and these are good skills. You know, people want to use them. And I mean, if you're using snipers, you'll use it, but use it like once, you know, which kind of sucks because it's fun to actually press abilities when you're using your minions. Sometimes you want a 0 button, which is cool. You know, people like that style, but it's nice to be active. And I know they want us to actually use skills, so they really need to like reduce that mana cost or give us ways to have more mana regen or something, just to like use it, you know, because it is fun pressing these buttons for these skeletons and stuff. And along with that, a rework of the skills of the active abilities, because if you look at the Brute, well, I don't even have the Brute here. The Brute doesn't even have an active ability. He should have some type of active ability. Command Death Storm with the mages, it's dependent on dead skeletons. That kind of sucks. So maybe having some way to reliably trigger this more often. Otherwise, no one ever uses it. Like I never used it for Storm Mages, and I doubt anyone else does. Same thing with the Arsonist, right? You have to blow up your minions. So maybe just rework the skills. These guys, like Command Enrage, it would be so sick if they exploded after the time ran out, right? AoE damage, that'll kind of be nice to, you know, constantly press it, they blow up, have last gasp on them, whatever, they blow up, and then they immediately respawn. That would be kind of cool way to play, but then, you know, AI needs to get fixed. So there's a lot of things that need to get done. I don't know. They probably won't change that. The thing that's reasonable for the next season is a reduced mana cost. Hopefully that's on a bingo card. Reduce mana cost. That would be great if they could reduce mana cost. Reworking the skills. I can see they're kind of strapped for time and stuff like that, but that would be nice. Active abilities even for the Spectres too. That'll be really nice to go into. And then number 9 is the general bugs. So there's only 3 that I can really think of right now. The big one is Storm Mages. When Storm Mages are at maximum range, they do no damage. I don't have an example for you because I don't have my Storm Mages out, but the biggest culprit is whenever I'm doing Trial of Sekmas, I run into it all the time. It's so annoying. And that's been there since season 1, so hopefully they change that. Hopefully they increase the range of attack and reduce the engagement range or something like that, so that way the Storm Mages are not this maximum range, out of range attacking, doing no damage. The other big bugs are what is it called? It's with the support gems. So Fawn of Rage, that's a huge bug, right? And even the distance of Fawn of Rage support while on Pain Offering is reduced. It's not even the range of Pain Offering. So hopefully they put it in there. Fawn of Rage works, it builds rage, and it's at the range of Expanse for the Pain Offering, right? And then there's one more. What's the other one? Sacrificial Lamb. Yeah, we just talked about it earlier too. Talked about it already. We're gonna hit it again. Just let this thing sacrifice too, dude. Right? Whenever you use your Fawn of Rage or your Pain Offering, hopefully this Dance Macabre, where it offers 2, it comes from all the sources of Sacrificial Lamb. I mean, I know that's an easy fix. Hopefully they fix that, because that's kind of it's just kind of annoying. Everyone wants it to work that way and think that it should work that way, so hopefully it does. But that's it for the general bugs I can think of right now. If anyone else has some other ones that they thought of, please leave it down. We can talk about it. And then number 10, right? Ooh, number 10. Where is it? Hold on. Here, number 10 is Raging Spirits. Man, Raging Spirits needs to have some kind of buff. The nerf that they did to it with summoning only 2 at a time, or from what it used to be, which was 5 with it was different depending on what you had summoned. But like with Firewall, it would summon 5 at a time, and they need to change it. They need to make it to where at least change the amount of Raging Spirits summoned as you level. Something like that, or maybe, I don't know, more, right? You could attribute more spirit, so that way it would summon more, just for the people who want to use Raging Spirits. Like, Raging Spirits in season 1 it was cool. For 30 spirit you got about 15% increased damage, and then it would fall off towards endgame. Once you really started to have like your minions going with their basic attack, then you didn't really need them. Like one more minion was more damage than all the raging spirits up, all 10 of them. But nerfing them now, I mean, through the campaign they're great, right? It's good added damage. 2 raging spirits is actually really good for the campaign with how they've changed the campaign from the beginning of Dawn of the Hunt. But for endgame, they're totally useless, right? Because you have to channel so much. It's basically like PoE1, right? You have to sit there and channel as many raging spirits. You can use like I forgot that one skill that builds up charges. You could use that, but then it's not really raging spirits, right? Like you're playing a different skill. So hopefully they do something to bring it back. And like, imagine again, right? You summon a bunch of raging spirits. You have them all up. They get hit by an AoE. They're immediately killed. I don't even know if you can put last gasp on them. I think you could. Yeah, you can put last gasp on them, but then now your main damage dealing skeleton doesn't have last gasp. So there's another issue with only being able to put 1 support gem, right? I know it would be overpowered for other classes and their support gems, but hopefully they change it up. I don't know. Maybe they'll be flexible with attaching last gasps or certain support gems to multiple uses, you know. But yeah, bring back raging spirits. Make raging spirits great again. That would be good. Next up, number 10, raise zombie. Oh man, this is a skill that everyone wants to use, but it sucks. It sucks. It sucks a lot. By far, people want to use it. They try to get it to work. They use power charges. It's too much of a pain in the ass to get it going, to build. You know, you only summon 1 at a time. Like, there's a lot of things you could use. Like, you can't even use sacrificial lamb, right, to summon zombies. Nope, you need a dead body. So I have sacrificial lamb. I can't cast it. I straight up need a dead body. So yeah, it's just not even worth it. Something similar, and look at how much mana it costs per cast, right, to raise a zombie. Where is it? I have to go over here. 455 mana. That's a lot. There's no way you can raise 10 zombies with this little of a mana pool of 1100, right? So hopefully they fix raise zombies. You know, it should be like the higher the level of the skill gem, the more zombies it raises per cast, up to like 5. So you raise 5 at a time. That would be really nice. Maybe a little overpowered, but I mean, come on, dude. Come on. It'll be fun. It'll be good. Hopefully they have, you know, something in the works for raise zombie. Maybe it'll be the release druid or something, and then you'll get like golems and raise zombie and who knows. But hopefully something with a raise zombie. That'll be super tight. Okay, so we made it. We're at number 12. Better uniques and runes. Go over the uniques first, right? Because there's not that many uniques, and I wish there were more. There's a lot of things you can do to like really spice up the game, change things up. But it's still early access, so they're probably working on stuff. They haven't even added like, you know, golems and all that other stuff. But for instance, this boot with the reduced reservation, this is a really good boot, right? It's really good, but the no movement speed really just, you know, makes it unusable for mapping and general play. You're either gonna have to keep this in your inventory and then swap to it at a boss fight, and that's just annoying. Nobody wants to do that, you know, unless there was like a gear swap button, so it just swaps on the fly. Maybe that could be a solution. Then it would be fine, you know. It's just like, okay, just swap to it at a boss. There's less of this like clunky, you know, in your inventory kind of managing system type of feeling. These rings, the ever grasping, this just got introduced in Dawn of the Hunt. These rings are nice. It just kind of sucks that they're tied to presence area, so it's kind of like on the end game power scaling, they're really important if you want to have a really big boost. So that's another conversation with end game power scaling. Even with, you know, maxed out rings and all this stuff, you're still not doing as much damage as you could. But for these uniques, they're not bad. They're good. They have a really big downside of not having elemental res, so you have to get elemental res from all your other spots. But it was a good addition, you know. If they added more uniques, they got to be careful, because if you put a unique helm, right, like this guy, for instance, the Alpha Cal's helm, even though it's plus 100 spirit, presence radius is doubled, which is really nice, right? It's got that dex requirement. That's kind of a pain, but it's understandable if you want to build around it. But as long as it's worth it, because look at this, right? It's a really good helm, but you lose 3 minion levels, which is basically a no-go. Can't do that. It would, you know, just be kind of like a waste. So better uniques in the form of spots that maybe won't kill your build too much. Like let's say, what about a charm? Unique minion charm. That could be cool. That could be really cool, right? Like I have a bears right here, so imagine having a minion charm that, you know, gave you a level or something like that. It would be a crazy chase item, but you know, more stuff like that, ways to get them as well. Like a unique minion scepter would be a really hard one to kind of take up a slot, because you get a lot of spirit from this, so that kind of sucks. One really good idea that I've had for a unique is something that allows, like, say the grapevines, right? Whenever you get a kill around you, it counts as your own. Maybe a unique of some kind that your effects apply to your minions. So like, you know, off the passive tree, if you have +1 to number of poisons, it's not just your poisons, it also applies to your minions. So that way your minions' poisons get multiple amounts, you know what I mean? So like 1 gas arrow, 2 gas arrows, stacks like 6 poisons or something like that. That would be awesome. And then things like cast on crit, right? It's not just your crits that count as a cast, it's also your minions' crits. Whenever they crit, you get a cast. Something like that. Maybe it could be a little overpowered, but you know, that would be nice, right? Because imagine cast on crit, gas arrows, and then auto casting contagions and stuff. That would be pretty fun. That would be a fun build to just kind of have, and then you're just only focusing on detonating with firewall or something. Something cool stuff like that. So, or even like trample toe, right? Then that would make the overkill damage from trample toe apply to your minions. Could be OP, but I mean, if you look at where our power scaling is right now, our power scaling is really shitty anyway, so that would be something that would be really nice to add in the form of uniques, you know, something that allows the effects that your character has to be applied to your minions. So yeah, cast on hit gems, you know, +1 stats from passives, things like that. So the next thing, right, the runes. Man, the runes is kind of a touchy thing, because like this was a good start. Reduce reservation on the helmet, but it's only on the helmet. So it would be nice if they kind of freed up you the ability to put it on other armor pieces. It would be overpowered for sure, but I mean, I guess in reality, we just kind of need more spirit adjustments is kind of where it is, right? So maybe this wouldn't be so crappy if they just adjusted the spirit adjustments for Spectres. But even ones like another spirit adjustment argument is the Scepter, right? It got nerfed in Dawn of the Hunt. So quality used to increase spirit, but now it doesn't. So, and then on top of that, the Socketable for spirit that goes in here, that guy only gives 10 spirit. So it would be nice if it was added spirit that got affected by qualities, and then you would have like a, you know, it would be easy to get these scepters that cost like 100 divine, like those levels of pricing for spirit, just to be able to have more access to it. Then it comes down, it turns into like a discussion about crafting though, which is like its own, that deserves its own thing. Socketables are supposed to take over crafting or help with crafting, and it's not working right. The economy is the way it is because there's no way to spend currency. There's no scouring to, you know, spend currency. That's its own conversation in its own right. So yeah, better runes, like more minion related runes. We were hoping that we would get something. You know, this is kind of all we got. Reduced reservation, and then the crappy one with increased extra spirit on the scepter. You could tell they're kind of really playing it safe, you know, but it's time for some fun, man. We gotta have some fun. So I hope we have some fun and they add in some good stuff along with this new patch. The hopium's high. All right, so that's the list, right? That's the wish list for 0.3. You know, this is stuff that they've already shown that they had. So these are like mostly like fixes and stuff. All the things they haven't introduced, like I hope we get them. You know, talked about it earlier in the beginning. I hope we get the animate guardian, the golems. Maybe the druid's gonna be, you know, a part of all that, but only time will tell. This is the stuff that's already in that they could fix and just make way better. I doubt we're gonna get all of these, you know. Hopefully we get a few of them from the Spectre fixes, the elite Spectres, you know, the AI, better AI, support gems, you know, muster, being able to set minions to aggressive from like feeding frenzy, the death timer separation, a buff to presence area, spirit adjustments, passive tree adjustments. Oh, please, for the love of God, bring back the endgame power that we used to have. At least some form, some variation of it. You know, rework active abilities, the general bugs, right? From the sacrificial lamp to font of rage to like the distance from the storm mages, raging spirits, make that great again. The zombies, do something with the zombies, and then uniques and runes. So thanks guys, appreciate all the support, you know, like, comment, sub, do all that kind of stuff. And I'll catch you guys in point 3. Peace out. Bye.